Hello, and welcome to our lecture here at everydaybuddhist.org. I'm Reverend Peter Hata, and I happen to not only be a Buddhist minister, but also a jazz musician, which probably helps explain the title of my lecture, Jazz, Buddhism, and the Creative Flow. But I must confess that I was a little worried about this title because in most lectures on jazz, we probably see the word jazz paired with words like improvisation. And in lectures on Buddhism, we'd probably expect to see the word Buddhism paired with words like meditation or mindfulness. But the words jazz and Buddhism are not usually seen together, right? However, as both a Buddhist minister and jazz musician, I do think that there are in fact aspects of jazz music that are uniquely capable of helping us understand and appreciate Buddhism. And I think this is important because gaining a better understanding of Buddhism can help us lead better lives. The Buddha himself always said that his teachings, which as you may know are referred to as the Dharma, are in fact designed to reduce our suffering and difficulty and help us live happier and more fulfilling lives. And conversely, if you already appreciate jazz music, your appreciation can certainly be deepened by seeing the various ways in which jazz can be seen as an expression of the Buddhist teachings. And just in case you were wondering, let me add that although I will be playing some jazz music, you do not have to be a jazz musician, jazz aficionado, or even necessarily have to like jazz in order to be able to see or actually hear the connections between jazz and Buddhism and to benefit from gaining an understanding of the Buddha's teachings. Now you might be wondering, well, what exactly is the relationship between the Buddha's teachings, between the Dharma and jazz? Well, one very important characteristic or essence we might say both share is one that's referenced in the title of this talk, Jazz, Buddhism, and the Creative Flow. Both jazz and Buddhism can be thought of as being a kind of flow, as exemplifying in one way or another the experience of constant movement and change. In just a little bit, we'll hear examples of this flow in actual jazz music. But let me clarify at this point that in its teachings in the Dharma, Buddhism describes the actual fundamental reality we experience in every moment of our lives as in fact being a constant flow. This is true regardless of whether it's the most mundane things like the red light I find myself having to wait for, or contemplating the loss of my loved ones and my own mortality. And as mentioned in this lecture's description, at the deepest level, both jazz and Buddhism aspire to wake us up to the fundamental truths of life, to this constant, ever-creative flow. Now, interestingly, in his book, Buddhism Plain and Simple, the Zen Buddhist teacher Steve Hagen discusses this profound insight into the ever-present flow, one which was gained by the Buddha, the person who awoke to it 2,500 years ago. When the Buddha spoke of individuals, rather than using terms like me or you, he often used a different term, stream. Imagine a stream flowing, constantly moving and changing, always different from one moment to the next. Most of us see ourselves as corks floating in a stream, persisting things moving along in the stream of time. The fact is, however, there are no corks in the stream. There is only stream. And then Steve Hagen adds that we are like music. Music, after all, is a type of stream. Music exists only in constant flow, flux, and change. Once the flow stops, the music is no more. It exists not as a particular thing, but as pure coming and going with no thing that comes or goes. And Hagen then discusses the logical and also radical implication of the Buddha's stream analogy. As he says, quote, "If we are the stream, then what is it that experiences the flux, the flow, the change? The Buddha saw that there is no particular thing that is having an experience. There is an experience, but there is no experiencer. There is perception, but no perceiver. There is consciousness, but no self that can be located and identified." Here, Hagen is expressing essential core teachings of Buddhism. On the one hand, there is the essential flow itself, which in Buddhism is referred to by the term impermanence. And on the other hand, there's its logical implication, if you will, which is that if everything is flow, if everything is stream and there are no corks, then there is no such thing as an independent and permanent self. This is the Buddha's teaching of no self or non-self. In this talk, I'll just use the term no self. And now you might be wondering, but doesn't the fact that each of our physical bodies are unique, and that we have particular personalities, including our unique mental thoughts and opinions, don't these things prove that we have a self?